Here we are. Amazing.
Hello.
So nice to have you, Elik.
Yeah,
So
thank you
cool.
for inviting me.
So nice. We have big community joining today. So really cool to have you. I see people that are used, a lot of people that are used to be there and coming every time we do a webinar. It's really cool.
Yeah,
Okay, so cool to have you, Elik. Really appreciate that you're taking the time today.
of course.
And it's pretty amazing what you built in your career. So I think we have to go a little bit in, of course, what you've done in the past and what you're doing today, because I think we all learn great lessons from also the success you had and the success that you're having right now with the amazing product that you built, which is, I won't give too much in what you've built so far, but I would say my expectation from OpenAI would have to build exactly what you've built. So that's the dream tool, the company that you built. So we're gonna go into this. But first of all, I would love to have a quick presentation of yourself, if you're
Mhm.
like willing to do it, and explaining where you're coming from, what is your like educational background, what you've done in the past,
Mhm.
and the previous like success you had, and what you're currently building.
Absolutely. So, Jean-Louis, just thank you again for having me here. And we're big fans of Gladia, as you know, and uh, I assume we'll talk about that some more in a few minutes. But a little bit about myself. So, Elik Eizenberg. I have about 20 years of experience in AI in various iterations of AI. Obviously, we're now kind of in a new wave of AI innovation, but we had different names for AI over the last 20 years and more than that, actually. And I've done that in many different environments. So I kind of built AI systems in kind of the world of homeland security and military intelligence. Then I've spent a few years in algo trading, which is kind of trading on Wall Street, using algorithms, making buy and sell decisions, using AI, using algorithms and machine learning. Then I founded BigPanda, which is a company that essentially helps large enterprises solve the problem they have around too much telemetry, too much noise in their IT operation stack. Again, using AI technology, this is, at least when I was in the company, it was still kind of more traditional machine learning techniques. Now they're building some new LLM-driven workflows, but that has happened after I have left. So about 2 years ago, I left the company after almost 13 years at BigPanda. The company did very well, got to hundreds of employees and lots of very large companies using and depending on the platform. And now in the last year and a half, I've started a new company. I was very intrigued with this new wave of LLM technology and the new applications that you can build on top of it, and decided to start a new company.
So then, what's the name of the company? Can you introduce us a little bit the company?
Yeah, for sure. So the company is Scroll. It's called Scroll. And the main premise, when we started the company, and I see you just posted a link, thank you. The premise when we started the company wasn't as mature as what we have today, but the basic idea was this. Most LLMs are very kind of general purpose. They're generalists, and the information that they are trained on and the information that they use to answer questions is essentially any public information, right? It's all the kind of either licensed content or online content, but it's very general purpose. And what that results is in an AI that is very good at answering almost any question you have, but the depth of the answer is fairly superficial. So you wouldn't call it an expert in any one topic. It's just very smart in a lot of different topics. And we said, hey, what happens in a world where you need to use AI, to lean on AI to really solve a problem or generate an insight, or write a piece of content where you really want to understand something in depth. You want to be an expert on that specific specialized domain, then it becomes very difficult to use that very broad system. And for two main reasons. One is that because these general AIs, off-the-shelf AIs, they're trained on so much information. One, a lot of the information there is just garbage, or I wouldn't say garbage, but kind of low quality information, not necessarily expert content or what you would use to actually make sense of of a specific domain. The other piece of it is because they depend so much on licensed information and the general internet, whatever is publicly available, they don't have access to these kind of in-depth private repositories of information. So it's essentially very broad, but also very shallow. Whereas we say, what happens if you try to build an AI that is based on not a lot of knowledge, but very deep knowledge? And that was the premise of the company. Now, the first user we approached wasn't the same user we're approaching now. It was actually journalists. So to this day, we still have thousands of journalist users. And the reason we thought they were interesting is because, a journalist that writes feature articles, these kind of long form articles that analyze a specific topic, a journalist needs to become an expert on a specific subject very quickly, right? They have to go in depth and understand a new topic, understands all the nuances, all what is unique about a specific space, what are some risks, do some fact checking, and they have to do it very rapidly. They do it a few times every month. So we thought that would be a very good environment to try and build this kind of specialized AI technology. And we were very fortunate to work with some of the, I think, most amazing writers out there. But then, as the product matured, we decided to go into some areas that were more commercially viable. And our current focus is actually helping people within organizations, within enterprises and startups and any kind of company generate these kind of specialized insights or specialized experts based on highly curated knowledge bases.
Thank you for sharing the origin story. I have two things that comes to my mind based on what you've said. There is a track that is a bit more technical, and there's a track that is more GTM. And as a founder, and you've been through that 2 times with BigPandas and Scroll, you mentioned something that is probably one of the biggest pain or one of the biggest decision the founder has to make in the beginning is like finding your persona or finding your ideal customer profile. Would you mind sharing what is a persona and what is a ideal customer profile in your point of view? And when or at which point did you make the decision to switch from journalist to another market or another type of persona? And what were the implications, internally as a founder, because I'm sure you didn't sleep well during this period, and for the rest of the team?
Yeah, great question. So, it happened actually twice for me. Also in my previous company, we went through quite a journey. So we started by building a product that does kind of big data, AI analysis for marketing. Then we moved from marketing to IT operations, but we sold to very small companies. Then we kind of pivoted to large enterprise, and then we found a good fit. And I think at that point of time, it was more around just, you want to survive, right? So you try something, it doesn't work enough, you're running out of money, so you're pivoting, you're trying again, you pivot again, and then eventually at some point it sticks. I think in this company, the mindset is a little bit different, where we're intrigued by this high-level problem, and that question has not changed. Like the question around how do you create a specialized AI that has expert knowledge, that is the same question that we started with when we started the company. It's still the same technology we're building. And a little bit what we're trying to find is what would make this, a big enough company to allow us to build out our vision, right? And so what is the right market that would allow us to fund that vision and continue scaling? And with journalism, we felt it was a very good market in terms of it's an important space. We had the right people to be our design partners, but it wasn't the right one to give us the commercial foundation, to be able to scale the company. And in our vision, it's not just what I just articulated, is just the beginning. And we think, there's something here if you look at a much longer time horizon, 5 years, 10 years, I think this kind of idea of specialized experts in AI is going to be very central to how we do a lot of things in this new emerging AI economy. So, we do want to make sure there's a big enough market to fund that vision and continue scaling. But I'd love to hear from you. Like, did you go through any kind of, this sort of long winding road in Gladia, finding the right ICP?
Oh my God, the chaos. Yes, we did run through this journey. It was hard. People tend to look success and think, yeah, it was perfect. It wasn't the case for Netflix. It wasn't the case for NBA. It wasn't the case for anyone, actually. It's very rare to find the right ICP. Usually it's more second-time founders that have it. Anyways, very quickly on Gladia, we started based on the open source project I've made, which was like an AI platform where you could deploy 500 APIs, AI APIs from image recognition, speech recognition, speech synthesis, etc., into one single container, and it will like automatically like swap the RAM, the VRAM from the GPU to make sure you always have the models, and it's going to swap with the cache, etc. And that was like one GPU can run all the, let's say, Hugging Face Hub kind of. That was the main idea. So I worked on that. Then I started the company, get fundings, and then we started to explore. And one big learning I had was by doing everything, you do nothing. That's probably the biggest learning I had. And you have a tiny smile, so you know what I'm talking about. You can't do everything, otherwise you don't have the focus and you don't have the like the messaging, etc. And when we started to pivot, then we just like talk to as many people as possible. And that's the over counterintuitive, like first time founder idea that you should keep your idea secret, otherwise someone's going to steal it. I think that should be the right, totally the opposite. You should talk to as many people as possible, especially in those times with AI when you just have to use like Lovable and then the idea is like unpredictable in 1 minute. So I think what's important is to have the feedback. So we first switch by talking to as many people as possible, and then this is where we found that speech to text was the underserved market with like huge problems from the big providers like time, quality, speed, speed, quality, and the price. And this is where we started this journey. But what's interesting me with your profile is that it's the second time founder. And I'm going to share something that I've seen with second time founders. Usually they don't start a second company because it's taking them years to think about, because they've been through this pain of persona and ICP finding. And they end up saying, I'm thinking about the next gig. And then they overthink the stuff. And you have something when you're first time founder. That's why for everyone in the chat, just start your company. Just start it. You're crazy. You're going to make mistakes. You don't have ideas. It's going to be a pain for sure, 100%. But that's going to be the fun of the journey. With second time founders, it's funny because they've been through the pain for the first company and they hesitate to go into this market because they think about the depth for the market and they're not crazy enough to start another company most of the time. And what's interesting with you is that you started with journalism, which is probably one of the market that has the least funding and the least money. And still you got these ideas and you have this dream and you have this vision, and still you went into it, whatever you thought about the market depth. And you started building on this vision, and then you thought about like this move from changing the ICP and the persona, which is very unusual for second time founder. So I would say applaud you for taking the risk and going into this route, because
thank you. Just to say something on that point, I think there are two aspects I think to being a founder, and I totally agree with the framing you just said around the pain you have to go through. I think there are two things you need as a founder, right? You need thick skin, which you also develop over time, but you need thick skin to be able to kind of endure pain and keep going. And the other thing is you need motivation, right? You have to have a reason to wake up in the morning and actually endure that pain. And if you have both components, you'll get through. And I think I have fairly thick skin, which allowed me to endure the pain of BigPanda and endure the pain again of this new company. I think the motivation has changed somewhat. Like in the first company, the motivation is, I want to be my own boss. I want to build a company. You're kind of, it was a little bit more. I was 28 years old, and I just wanted to start a company and build my own culture, my own product, work with a co-founder, and that was the main motivation. And so the one metric of success was, are we moving forward, right? Are we scaling? Do we have more customers? Are we generating more revenue? Is the product becoming more mature? Here, with Scroll, it's a little bit different because the motivation is, there's a very interesting problem that I think is worth solving, and I'm really passionate about this one problem, and I want to solve that problem. So you don't need the endurance, but here it's not about just moving forward. It's actually around finding the best path to have that vision manifest over time.
And it's very interesting what you're saying, because you just mentioned about the things about scaling, and I would say the zero to scale, from 0 customers to scaling. I'm sure you had many pains. I would love to have your technical story around that. You have many things that you have in your product. So to summarize, you have these notebooks and you have some theses that you can bring into your notebooks, a bit like if I were having my own um, personal agenda with like my tickers and say, hey, this is everything I want to know about like flash attention, or everything I want to know about, I don't know, founders starting a journey with ICP and person, etc. And I have like all my tickers and I can put like all my bookmarks in it. And it's like smart
Yeah.
bookmarks, and then you can chat with them. I would summarize it the way I see it.
Yeah.
In that, you have many things. You have the hallucinations underlying in your notebooks. That is a big topic that we align on. That's one of the big fight we have. And you have the questions of the scaling that I think is very important for you as a tech founder. I would love to have like your point of view into what is the journey from zero to scaling and infrastructure and the product coverage that you have, and the, I would say, drawbacks of having success, and how do you make your decisions upon the product coverage and the scaling and yeah, overall the distribution.
Yeah, I love that question. I think, I can talk to my journey in BigPanda that I think we were able to overcome some of the challenges, but what one of the main challenges we had on the product side in BigPanda was, as the company grows, you have more and more use cases, because essentially you're serving more customers. Customers have a list of use cases, and you're trying over time to solve for more and more potential inputs, potential integrations, different problems. And as you do that, you're building more features and more components, and over time you have a very big surface area. It becomes the product becomes a city, right? It's no longer a building, it's a city. And then it becomes chaotic. It becomes very hard to reason about the product, very hard to introduce major changes in the product, because you have so many moving parts and so many components and so many unplanned implications of every change you make. And I think you become not so you don't become agile. You become less and less agile. You lose a lot of your ability to innovate over time. The product feels not cohesive enough. So, different screens have different components, and like different languages and language and terminology, and it just feels like the product feels a lot like a 10-headed monster at some point, instead of this very, you want a Ferrari. Instead of a Ferrari, you're getting this crazy beast. And I think that is something that every company has to overcome. If you're trying to think long-term enough with your company, not just close the next deal, reach the next milestone in terms of quarterly revenue, but if you're actually asking the question of how can I build a sustainable, high-growth company for the long term, then you always have to rationalize and figure out a way to decrease the surface area of the product, create more cohesiveness, sometimes delete features, sometimes consolidate features. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. And it's something that I'm much more, deliberate about in Scroll. So in Scroll, as we're adding more features, we're always thinking, is it added as are we using duct tape to, glue another feature to a big product, or are we actually simplifying the product and making it a little bit more robust and support more use cases with a simpler overall user interface, simpler product architecture. So it's a little bit different. I wonder how is it in Gladia? Like, you went through this fairly long journey at this point. You have a lot of different customers, different use cases. How do you keep the surface area sane for a product like this?
I think that's a good question, and the way I see it is very mathematical or geometrical, if you wish. I think, as you said, you have a surface that usually I would say that every startup is going to have this, for sure, and that's okay. We have to live with it. But you have some battles that you need to pick, and you have a defined workload or defined number of people that you have in your company, and then you have a certain number, or I would say, features that you want to cover. And the problem is, like, when you're looking for your um, market fit, I would say this, you're gonna iterate on what are the features that fits the market. And the problem, you can see that as a triangle, and you have a defined workload or defined number of engineers. And the more you're exploring the market, you're kind of changing the features there. But the area that you have under the curve has to remain the same because this is the manpower you have, kind of.
Yeah.
So either you put a lot of pressure on the team and you try to have a bigger surface area, and then either you put some duct tape, which is okay when you're trying to do the, I would say the market fit. Trying to find the PMF is okay to put duct tapes because you don't want to consolidate something that you're not sure on, and you want to iterate fast. But at some point, when you find your product market fit and your ideal customer profile and persona, then at some point you need to decrease the surface area, as you said, or increase the number of engineers. That's the trade-off. And increasing the number of engineers means like you need to have more fundings or money getting into the company. And as you said, you can't just focus on the next deal. It needs to be something consistent so that we can reduce the number of features. And when you increase the number of engineers, first it's to make sure you consolidate the area under the curve. So I totally agree. And once you have a clear PMF, at some point you have better fundings, and when you have better fundings, you can increase the number of engineers, so then the area can grow again. And then you're going to try to expand to new markets. So for instance, you talk about journalists. Maybe journalist was not the right PMF to start with, but maybe at some point Scroll is going to be strong enough to address journalists with one of the few features that you have, and then you're going to have bigger deals with like New York Times or whatever, like I say, deals at the company level, not at the journalist level, not at the individual levels. And then maybe it would make sense to expand your capability, but that's the core business needs to remain relatively like structured and limited. So we had the same challenges, especially one thing with STT is like it's very infrastructure intensive. And so the more you have customers, the more workload you're going to have, and the more effect you have on the GPUs. You start to have like some weird effect on the GPUs when you start to have like big workloads. So the surface area needs to definitely like be concentrated even more because it's a very big pain to handle like infrastructure thing. But talking about STT,
I like the I don't know if it's an analogy, but like the image of the surface area in this triangle where you can play with the dials on the 2 dimensions, but you cannot play with the one thing that is invariable is the surface area because it's dependent on size of company, maturity of company, funding. It's a very good framework, I think, and it probably applies to many areas of company management, not just product, but
not just product. Good. I think it's the same for marketing. You have a limited number of hours during the day. That's it. You have to pick your battles, and especially with AI because things are going so fast. So you be extremely narrow. Things can change from one day to the other. So, and I was surprised in your product of the one thing that you had that was, in my opinion, amazing is, of course, the speech, because I'm passionate about speech. And I've always said that speech 2x our speech in general, has the most concentrated knowledge in the shortest amount of time. With 5 hours speech, especially me, you can write a book. Like all the content you have in 5 hours speech is very, very concentrated. So you can write a book with that. And you have included STT very, very soon into your product. And I was wondering, why do you think about the future of STT and why is it so central? And what are your decision making when it goes to that, like water rate, diarization, speed, etc.? How do you make those decisions? And do you think like speech is going to have what's the future of speech into your area, especially of knowledge?
Yeah, great question. So you kind of said it, and we're not the first people to say it, but a lot of very high quality information is in speech. That's the reason why we're seeing an explosion in different types of transcription software of different forms for different use cases, because I just think, like you said, speech is just a gold mine of high quality information. Specifically, when you think about these kinds of specialized expert AIs, they depend strongly on what I would call private data. So things that are not actually public out there in the form of books and articles. And it's not Wikipedia. It's actually where people have private conversations or private, it could be even a training session. It could be some kind of a sales call. But when you look at these kind of private environments, sometimes the most insightful information is being shared. And there's good reason, right? Because if something becomes public, then it's commoditized, everyone has access to it, and it's no longer your secret. So a lot of the things that actually would power expertise are the things that are being said over voice. So for us, it was very important. It became immediately clear when we started with journalists, because when you talk to them and you ask, what's your process? They say interviews. They just keep interviewing people. So let's say somebody's covering some company had just quarterly results and somebody's writing a feature article about the financial results of that company. They interview ex-employees, analysts, current employees, and they try to create this 360-degree picture of the company, like really in-depth understanding of the company and its performance. And all of that is collected over speech and audio. Like you can look at the quarterly results, they're important, but they're kind of just a tiny segment of the actual data points you have to collect, all the evidence you have to collect to create a good in-depth analysis. So we built this really pretty mature, I would say, a solution around transcribing, diarization, playback, build a full-blown solution around supporting audios for that purpose. And it just, very organically, it proved to be also very useful with our new ICP within organizations, because they have a lot of, not just interviews, they have classes, training classes, sales calls, team meetings, weekly calls, all of that is very high quality information that can feed into an expert. So I'm very happy we built that and made Gladia our partner for that.
Thanks. Yeah, I really appreciate that you're there. I think it's really a new way to reinvent the expertise within companies. I was talking, that's sharing personal insights, but I was talking to one big luxury company back in the days in Europe. That's a bit the business we have in Europe, luxury.
Yeah.
And the problem they have is that I would say, experts, the employees, the old employees, are now getting retired. And most of the knowledge they have is something that has not been written.
Yeah.
And so you're losing the expert. And one of the big problems the luxury market has is, how do I keep these experts, even if they are going on retirement? And for now, they never found something like similar on the market, when you can share both the internal and the interviews, because you mentioned interviews. Sometimes it could be interview of like very expert employees and stuff like that. And I think all in all, with AI handling our emails, AI handling, the post on LinkedIn and stuff like that, and AI doing some of the code, etc., is going to come back to human conversations and human expertise that you want to have in one place, but you want to retrieve and interact with it. And I think Scroll is just like the perfect tool for that. To me, it's like the second brain, kind of my second brain. That would be probably the best qualification I have from this. That being said, when it comes to STT, what were your challenge? Because I guess in big organization, you have like plenty of, I would say, different departments with different expertise, different persona, different languages, different speakers, accents, etc. What were your challenge when you went into the STT evaluation?
Yeah, I think there's kind of the more standard, every article you'll find about speech to text, you'll kind of say, hey, look into word error rate and the accuracy of the diarization. Of course, the speed of processing, cost is a factor. But so obviously we looked at all of these measurements, but we also asked the question of what is very unique to our use case, right? Because every use case is different, obviously. So for us, it was a lot around, people upload low quality audio, because audio could be if it's a journalist, it could be an interview in a noisy bar. If it's in a corporate setup, it could be somebody just putting their phone on the table, having a conversation with someone and pressing record on their phone. So the audio sometimes is very low quality. But because we're positioning the product as this expert, no hallucination platform, we still need we cannot just kind of assume that we know what is being said. It has to be very accurate for this specific type of audio, which is low quality with some background noise. So we very purposely created an evaluation set that had low quality audio and tested the word error rate, not just for any type of audio, because you can take a Zoom call, which has high quality. Everyone is with their microphones and headphones, and obviously the audio is very high quality, and that's awesome. But almost every model will have very high word error rate. But the truth is that it doesn't matter, because it's it's a 0.1% of difference. What matters is how a model behaves in this kind of less than perfect environment. So we had I give you just one example. We found a video of an interview with Formula One team members that was in a Grand Prix. So you had the background noise of the cars and all, all the audience, all of that, tons of noise. I could barely understand what is being said. And we sent that to expert, like professional transcribers. And they went through the interview. They created a very high quality transcription that was 100% accurate. And then we used that, to actually test the different models. And it was clear that some models behaved way better with this low quality audio than others. So that was one thing. The other thing, and I know it's also very important to you, is language support and accent support. Journalism, for sure, journalism is a worldwide problem. A lot of the people you talk to speak in different languages, but also in a tech company. Companies are global. You have immigrants, of course, working in tech companies, tons of accents. Sometimes if you have multiple offices in different countries, somebody might provide some kind of a very high quality lecture to their team members in one language, but you want to be able to apply that knowledge in a different language. So for us, language support, accent support was very important. So we also tested that with various. I think Gladia was very unique, and I think you have over 100 different languages that you support. But also for English, for example, you supported so many different accents and so perfectly. That was important. And maybe just one more thing is the kind of jargon, because if you sell to a company, they have their own terminology that they use, a lot of shorthand terms, acronyms, all of that. And if you get that wrong, then the AI expert answers will be horrible, just horrible. Because if somebody says, something in cybersecurity, a certain acronym, and you don't get that, you essentially lost the knowledge, that piece of knowledge. You cannot use that to synthesize AI answers. So for us, the ability to work with jargon and understand very unique terms, that was also important. So I would say these were kind of the very bespoke needs that we had.
That's amazing. On my end, you're very good, like I would say customers, because you build your own data sets and the hardcore ones. So I think that's the best evaluation, but that's really interesting. The way you went through this process, it's like even for you it was hard, so you had to have professional people building your data set, and I think that's we don't see that often, to be honest. That's why you make wise choice in the end, but that's very very interesting.
Well, what's your guidance there? Like, I assume you provide a lot of coaching to different companies. Do you recommend using custom evaluation sets or kind of out of the box ones?
Yeah.
What's your approach?
I think there are some data sets that people always brag on that you should avoid. LibreSpeech is a good example. Common Voice is another one. There is a mistake that most of the people do, is like they use those numbers that are in the papers or the numbers that are like widely used, especially Common Voice and LibreSpeech, which are narrated content. And the way you speak when you're reading a book is not the way you speak when you're like being in a meeting or an interview. And the prosody, the way you speak, and the speech, the pitch you're gonna have, the speed you're gonna have, etc., will be totally different. So that's the one thing probably the people make the most mistake on. The second one is they rely on word error rate algorithm that are usually tailored for English. So I'm going to take some. I mean, you're from Israel, right? So you have maybe an English that is a bit different from the English language that Americans use, and it's a bit different from the English that we have. And the Americans have very different. They have some contractions, for instance. They say you would. They'll say you'd be able to, etc. And then the word error rate is going to be, hey, you would, and that's the official transcriptions that said, but then you transcribe with you'd be able to, for instance, and they're gonna say, hey, you have two insertions, you and would, and then you have a miss, which is you'd. So you have 3 penalties, but the reality it was correct. So that's easy to understand in English, right? And you have plenty of them. Like you will be able to do that. I'm, I am, etc. Now think about other languages. Think about, like, for instance, Tagalog. They use a mix of Spanish, English, kind of in the Asian languages, and their own, of course, the language. But they put some prefix to say, hey, by the way, this word is English, so you're going to put a hi, maybe it's a hi with a dash, and then there are so many subtleties in different languages. And the second mistake people make is they use a word error rate qualification algorithm that's been designed for English without taking into considerations what are the subtleties of the language that you're trying to evaluate on. And if you purely count on the words that you have, the miss, etc., then your order rate can like skyrocket. You can be 90%. When you start to correct, all these contractions can go down to like 15, 10%, even less. So we had some customers say, hey, you have 40% error rate. I was like, I'm surprised. Then we started to look in the order rate, and then you say, okay, let's correct all these contractions, and then you're back to less than 9%. So that's the second mistake that people make most of the time. And the third one that I've seen a lot is like most of the developers, unfortunately, are like the two of us, male in their 30s, 40s, most of the time educated, speaking English, good microphone, good setup. That's not the case of your customers. They could be female. Female is like around 15 to 20% less accuracy. It could be child, if you think about like doctors and stuff, and clinicians. So that's the third thing, is like not adapting your evaluation based on the use case you're going to have. So that's the right thing that you did, is that's where it's very important on your side, taking the conditions where your software will be used. And most of the people miss that. So I would say that the three big mistakes I've seen so far. And yes, that's probably the three key elements I would suggest to people: to make sure you have the right data sets, make sure you're not mistaking border rate in one language for another one, and the third one is evaluating to the right conditions. And you
It's
did
very interesting what
everything
you say
perfect.
about the demographics of the ICP. I haven't heard anybody talk about that. So you have every company has an ICP, like you say, a doctor who treats children, for example, is a very different. Their ICP is very different than an ICP of our company, for example. So thinking about the ICP, then understanding its demographics, female, male, different countries, different ages, that's super interesting. Yeah.
You know, we work with a French company. I can't name it, but there was a French company that we work with, and they handle some booking, and they have some spikes happening in Monday mornings. So that's the other thing that you need to evaluate when you're doing like speed shootouts. We talk about speed, the consistency of the speed. Everyone is booking at the same time as on Monday morning. It's mostly female in their 70, 60, 70. And the developers were all people in their 30s evaluating the speech to text at night, because this is where they are coding. So that's another good example of bias you're going to have, not only like the demographics and stuff like that, but there is also the bias of, I said, the real life conditions. Is it over the phone? Then it becomes 8 kilohertz, so very shitty audio. It's not because of the microphone of the person. It's just like the phone lines are designed to handle 8 kilohertz. But also, when do you have that? Because you're going to have like big variabilities on the latency. And for instance, for real time, people are like, it's 300 milliseconds. Is it 300 milliseconds 50% of the time or 90% of the time? Because you can be right one time, the average, but we don't care about the average. What we care is like the P90, right? Or the P99. And so that's another big topic about scaling and all these things. Anyways, that should be considered. Like the range of usage of your software is super important. Also. And I have some questions, because you've been like so nice to share with us some insights around your journey. And I would like to know if you can share your thoughts about one topic that I know is important for you, is like, what does a startup friendly vendor is for you? I know you mentioned that multiple times in the past. Would you be like kind enough to share your advice on those kind of things when you're starting a company, and why is it important?
Yeah, I love that question. So I'll say this. I think one, you know, I think there are kind of two very contradictory kinds of vendors that you would use. So one would be like the kinds of vendors that you forget about. A vendor that you essentially say you deploy. Like for example, for us, we use Clerk. If you know Clerk, which kind of helps you with the user management. We use them, and the good news about them is that we don't think about them, because they just work very consistently. They have very good support of what we need from them. So they kind of just super reliable and essentially allow you to abstract away that problem to another vendor. So that's one mode, I think, that is very friendly for startups, because like you said, you want to limit the surface area of the things you worry about. So if you don't have to worry about a specific space, that's great. Then the other type of vendor that is very good for startups is if somebody is innovating in a space that you are also trying to innovate in. So like for us, like I said, speech was a very speech to text is a core component of the product, and we want to offer innovation in that space. Then we want to partner with a vendor that also offers innovation in that space. And then essentially you are delegating that, right? You become a proxy for the innovation of your supplier. So yeah, I think you have to kind of choose wisely where you want to have these kind of vendors that you forget about, not because they're bad, but because they're too good. And then where you want the innovators that are a little bit more scrappy, they might have some bugs, might have some issues, but they're innovating and they're creating kind of they're discovering new territory, and you want to discover that new territory together with them. Yeah, I think that these are kind of the two types of companies that we like. By the way, yeah, Gladia is one company that is kind of the innovation space. We also we work closely with I don't know if you know them. There's a company called Zero that it's a framework, and they help you kind of build very responsive front ends because they do automatic caching of the back end. So I love them, and they're innovating rapidly, and we work closely with them to innovate based on their innovation. There's a company called UserJam, which does kind of analytics and allows you to really understand how users use the product using LLMs, also working closely with them. So I think I've had a lot of success working closely with these kind of small startups that are innovating themselves.
Is it the Zero I shared, Zero Rocky Corp that you mentioned?
UserJam, this one.
And UserJam. Amazing. Thanks for sharing. I really appreciate it. I have a little secret for you. Every time I'm having a trouble, I'm trying to find some solutions, and most of the time there can be heavy, like old players in the market, etc. And I usually find a startup that is kind of exactly what you're saying, solving the problem in an innovative way. And usually I invest in the startup to stay close to them and to have a say on the roadmap. And I have to be honest, it's been working super well. We have like StackSync, for instance, internally that's synchronize the database. We have a few vendors. Clap was another one. And you kind of not tailor the product of your vendor to your needs, but you're very close. So you have ways to influence the roadmap, give ideas, and kind of align the interests of the two companies. And I think that's super interesting when you're a startup, because sometimes you have some new ways to address the market or new ways to build a product. And sometimes it's going to be hard because you have not that a big revenue. And so going into big companies is going to be hard. They have big processes, etc. So this way it's very good to have this founder relationship. So I would suggest everyone starting to also have this mindset at some point. It's like sharing and being open to innovation, but also by finding the vendors.
Paul Graham just tweeted, I think it was in the last couple of days, he tweeted like, people tell you not to partner, as a startup, not to sell to startups. You should actually absolutely sell to startups, because there's something very magical about this relationship where startups work with other startups as customers, because they're innovating together essentially, and it's the same mindset.
So I won't lie, I will share another insight. I don't know if there are people from Clap in the room. Clap is a meeting recording company. And those people were the first among the first believers with Selecta. They were Selecta were like the two of them, and relatively tiny companies back in the days. Now they are like growing fast, but we've had the feedbacks from them. We wouldn't have like such a fast iteration that help us absolutely tailored the ICP and the persona of the meeting recorders that made us successful. And I can't thank them enough. And I think I gave them like very, very big credits back in the days. And I know the sales were like, hey, why do you give that much credits? Because those guys are sharing time and feedback. And that's the most valuable thing that you can have on the market when you're starting your company. So I can't be thankful enough to the whole community that we had since the beginning, sharing the feedbacks. And I think that's the most beautiful thing you can have. So partnering with big companies is not a no, but I would say you're not the one in control. They're gonna tell you what is the roadmap. They have already some vendors. They force you to be the same as the vendors that already exist. So you're kind of not disrupting the market. You're just copying the market. So and thanks to Clap, a good thing is like they told us we want to have a system that switch the language on the fly. Like, okay, let's do it. And then we built it. And it happened that we were the only one to do it in the market. And it's called code switching. Because they needed to have it. If we were to go into big institutions, they would have said that's not a priority. Our priority is like compliance, blah, 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 blah. And then we wouldn't be successful. Would have been successful. So that's a good example, exactly what you said. Partner with the startup friendly vendors. First, this code switching, if those people Clap, would have been to, I don't know, Microsoft or whatever big providers, they wouldn't have their say into having code switching. People would say this is how it works. And we had some customers doing every 10 seconds, they were taking the audio and putting the audio in the language detection API, then going back with the language, taking back those 10 seconds, changing the language of the model, push back the 10 seconds in the transcription, getting back and doing that everything. And they're like, Microsoft doesn't have the bandwidth and don't care about us. We are like 15K revenue. They don't give a shit, basically. Yeah. So again, very good advice on your hand. Pick your vendors that are like flexible and helps you innovate also and make your product different and unique in the market. That's a very good advice.
100%.
I would like to remind the committee to please ask your questions. We are so lucky to have Elik there. So please, and Elik, you are extremely successful with BigPanda. I wish you like the best also for Scroll. I'm a very big fan of Scroll. So like honestly, when I discovered it, I was like, this is what I expected OpenAI to be. So I wish you're gonna have an amazing success. Please ask your questions. I think Lauren, go for it, Lauren. Please ask your questions. So we're gonna wait a little bit.
Jean-Louis, I appreciate the kind words, and like I said, we are a big fans of Gladia. It's helped for us, like you said, new use cases that are not the standard use cases. Really helped us address them, and we often get, it's kind of an unfair cheat where you get strong positive feedback from a customer, but that it's not you that have addressed their, like somebody would say, oh, I love how you can transcribe this, specific dialect of Hindu, and say, it's not really us, it's Gladia, but you get all the accolades from the customers. So,
that's okay. I don't mind as long as you're successful and you have love from your community. I'm happy. And those kind of words is making everyone super happy. Like I will share that to the team. They really love like those snippets. Yeah, we are not frontal. That's a bit of the frustrations. But one of the things we said, and some people told us, why don't you build like those kind of tools? And so we don't compete with our customers. We want to stay focused, and that's go back to one thing. So being the infra people means that we don't have the same love as the people building the PLG products, consumer products, but that's okay. We we love it anyways. So Lauren is asking the questions. Lauren Dargo is having a company, and there are two co-founders in the early stage, and she's asking the question: how do you decide what to outsource to an early stage? There are so many areas to cover and plan. So I guess the question is, when you're building something, what should you do by yourself, and what you should delegate to vendors, because you have so many things to do, tech, of course, business, legal, admin, etc. How do you prioritize? Sorry.
Yeah, good question. I think from my end, I think that it's a fairly there's a well-structured way to answer this question, and it's basically, what do you do very well at a very low cost yourself and very quickly? And sometimes it's random. I had experience with, or my co-founder had even more experience with SOC 2 Type 2 certifications. And because we had that kind of experience, then we're just kind of doing a lot of that ourselves. Of course, we're working with the vendors we need to work with, but we're kind of running this ourselves because we have the experience and we can do it quickly at a low effort. So everyone has their own set of kind of secret skills that they have honed over the years in different environments. And if you're very good at mockups, do your own mockups. If you're not very good at it, then you should outsource that. So I'd say that is one dimension of the question: is, do you have a skill that makes it very inexpensive and easy to do it in-house? And the other one is, do you need to develop that skill? So if you need to get very good at something, you should not be outsourcing it, because then you will never get good at it. So if you feel like doing a consumer startup, selling to, I don't know, marketing to a very specific audience, you need to get good at kind of finding the channels and improving the channels of growth for that specific audience. You should not be outsourcing that, because then you will never develop the in-house knowledge of how to do that well. Whereas if it's something on the kind of not related to the core of the business, not going to be any part of the IP that you're creating as a company, and you don't have that secret skill set of doing that, you should just outsource that. Of course, the big challenge with outsource, in my experience at least, is finding actually good people. Some people are excellent, but some people are not so much, and they have fancy websites and they're good salespeople, but they're not necessarily very good providers. So maybe what you also need to be good at is understanding very early that an outsourced vendor is not good enough, and switching before you pay too much or before you're too invested.
And on my side, I have a cheat code for you. It's called Eisenhower matrix, which is very simple. You can build your own. It's like 4 squares. And basically, you have 2 things, exactly what you mentioned, because you mentioned ISO or SOC 2 certifications. You have something, what's the value for the company, and what's the effort needed to achieve that? And you can split it to 4 squares. And on your side, for instance, SOC 2 Type 2 has a lot of value for the company because it's privacy. People don't want to share their own recording, to share the, I would say, the information they have in the company, or they want to make sure they are in a safe environment. So SOC 2 Type 2 is definitely like a big topic for you. So I value. Then the effort. If you have the expertise for SOC 2 Type 2, then the level of effort you have is going to be like very low. So you have a lot of value for low effort, means that you should do it by yourself. And everything that is a lot of value but a lot of efforts, then you need to split into subtasks, and maybe you need to split with subcontractors or sub-projects, etc. Everything that has low value, low effort, you won't do, or you would delegate to an intern, and anything that has like low effort and high value, that you need to do it. But everything that is, I would say, within these squares needs to have a decisions. High value, low effort, just do it. That's a no-brainer. So again, it depends on your expertise and previous jobs. As you said, SOC 2 Type 2 was easy. For me, it's a pain. So we are in the same situation, let's say same stage of company, same type of problem, same type of ICP, same types of like demands from the customers. But depending on the background we have, we won't make the same decisions because the effort that is needed to bring this value won't be the same. So I would say it's very personal. There is no rules. It's just about this matrix, effort, value, put every project, every task in one of the squares and decide what you should do and where you bring the most value at the lowest effort in the company. I would say this is my personal framework for deciding that.
Very cool.
You're welcome, Lorin. And Lorin is building Dementia, if I'm correct, which is handling the dementia through speech. So very interesting topic, probably like mental health related. So I will definitely look into that, detecting disease through speech. That's very hardcore. Very interesting. Okay, do we have another question in the chat? Any other question? Sorry, I'm lost. I lost my my window. So, do you see any other questions on your side?
I don't think there are any other questions.
No other questions then? Yes, no, maybe.
Samuel seems to be asking something.
Go ahead. If you have the questions, please, can you take it? I'm trying to find back my window. Okay, I'm back.
He didn't post yet. He's just typing, but I'm sure.
Come on, Samuel. Let's go for it. Don't be shy. Samuel is building Rialo.com. So we're going to look at Rialo.com. So he has no choice to ask the question then. Yeah. Rialo.com is...
No question, but he really enjoyed the talk. Thank you, Samuel.
Nice. Okay, cool. So thank you so much. I think no questions. It's nice to have you, Samuel. So if we have no questions, I would like to take a few seconds to thank you again, Elik, for the great talk. I think you educated a lot us today, and I wish that everyone has learned as much as I did during this session. I wish you the best for Scroll AI. I'm definitely a big fan. Again, I think this is what everyone needs in his backpack of professional and personal backpack. And I just can say that I'm very impressed with what you built in the past. And I will try to copy your success that you had with BigPandas. And I will try to copy the innovation that you brought to School AI into our speech systems. It's very hard to improve the coverage of the features, but I will try to make sure that we are as sexy as you in the coming years. Thank you, Elik, for your time. Really appreciate and wish you the best.
Jean-Louis, thank you. Thank you first for building Gladia, and we're heavy users, and I think it's a very important piece of technology that needs to be built. So thank you for building it, and you and your team, of course. And also thank you for inviting me to this webinar. It was a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll do another one at some point. Thank you
You're
again.
welcome. Thank you so much. Have a good day, everyone. Thank you for attending. See you.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.